Hey again. So now we are in the third part of this recording where I talk about um, a lab. So let's do something in Unity and make it happen. So our lab today is going to be pretty simple. We're just downloading Unity, getting it set up, and putting a cube in the scene and doing something there. So let's get started. The first thing you need to do is go to, I think it's just unity.com. Yep, unity.com. And when you want to install it, let's find where it is in the modern setup. Unity Engine, download, and then you can download here. And I believe that will download, let me check, Unity Hub, right? Yep, Unity Hub. And I'll just skip this. Unity Hub, once you've installed it, will look like this, except it'll be empty for you. So Unity Hub, you're going to go navigate to the install section, and you're going to install an editor, and preferably I'd recommend, if you want to do the Unity 6 preview, you can, but I'd recommend LTS stands for long-term service. I'd recommend maybe Unity 2022.3.42 F1 or whatever is the current 2022 long-term LTS edition. I would just install it. In fact, I probably have a newer one on here. No, I don't. Okay, so yeah, 2022 point whatever is fine. And other than that, if you want to experiment with Unity 6 as well, I haven't actually yet. Feel free to try that. You download it, it installs. One note I should make is when you start installing it, there's some choices you need to make about things to include. It's fine for now if you just include like whatever it defaults to. Just do that because you can always go back and change it. So, for example, you can always these are things that are already installed. This will be empty for you until you've installed your first thing. I can hit add modules and same interface. I can just go through and select stuff as I want. So it's no big deal if you skip something. Okay, so now that you have your software installed, it's probably taken 20 minutes or whatever, however long it takes. You can now go to projects and say new project, and you'll have your drop down of like what version you want to use, and just use 3D the core one. Cool, and we can name it what is it, SDE, is that the name of this course? 373 lab. Create project. It's just going to put it right there. Sure. You should have a folder organization, by the way. Don't do what I do. Put it somewhere that makes sense. But I'm just showing it. So it's making that project. And now it's opening it. Now we play the waiting game. Ba, 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 ba. In real time, we can wait. So how are you guys? How's your day? This is a typical thing in Unity where it's a waiting game. But hopefully it's faster on your machines. I'm using, just a little laptop, but the rigs inside of the lab at Jefferson are much faster. And they're not experimental like this one. Oh, excuse me. It's like 10 o'clock here. Well, 9:30. So, yeah, there's a ton of different variables we can mess with here, like what version of Unity we're using, what project type you opened. All that will change how fast this opens. I bet if I did a 2D project, it would have opened faster, but I was in the mood for doing some 3D stuff. So it's probably importing a few bonus features that take a little longer to open. But 3D is more typical thing unless you're developing for mobile. So yeah, we're at 50% here, well, a little more. So what is Unity? Unity is a game engine. You can use it for many things, but it's primarily used for making games. Go figure. It is a 3D engine that can do 2D things as well. So in other words, you can have 3D experiences, you're moving around a 3D environment, or you can have like a mobile game where it's, only moving in two directions and there's like 2D art as opposed to 3D art, all that stuff. So you can do either side in this engine, totally fine. It is working on itself. And actually, look, right now is importing 13 packages because I chose the 3D project type. And that just makes it take a little longer. Here we go. Just going to take a little nap. Are we done yet? Okay. So we're just going to do something simple today, and everybody can follow along. And I'll just talk about what the layout is here when this is done. And I'll kind of shrink this. Actually, I'll put this here. And I'll shrink this to here. I'll shift my seat here so you can see me. So let's talk a little bit about Unity here. Unity works with scenes and projects. So we've made a new Unity project. When I say project, I refer to the whole folder. So if I go to my the SDE 373 lab, that's the project. If I go to its folder location, there it is. It's a project. That's the name of the folder. Everything in here are assets and other assisting entities in the project. Assets is where you'll typically be working. Library is a bunch of junk that's just made up that only matters to your computer. So whenever you send something to me, you can actually just delete the library and then zip stuff up, because all the library does for you when you're trying to send it to me is make it take 3 times longer, because the library is always huge. Anyway, so we have a project. It's empty right now. It always gives you a default scene. They usually throw it in the scenes folder, and there it is, sample scene. A scene is a sort of like a container for an environment, a set of behaviors, anything you want to happen. Sometimes people have like main menu be a scene, and then have like create, right click, create scene. Am I blind? Let me know if you see it there. Scene. And so they'll have like main menu and then like game scene. Like they'll break up the phases of their game into separate scenes so that they double click into main menu, and then they would see like all the stuff that they would consider like being the main menu page, where you like press A to start or whatever it may be. And then when you go into the game scene, they see like the world and maybe a little player moving around, like all that stuff. So there's a ton of different ways to break up your project into these scenes. Some people work with one scene. But for us, we're just going to have the, what is it called? Sample scene. So sample scene. The way I did that, by the way, was in Unity, if you click once and then click twice, after you wait a little bit, then it lets you rename it. Or you can right click and rename. I don't care either way. So we're in our sample scene, and we have a main camera and a light. Every object in Unity is called a game object, and every game object appears in, this is called a hierarchy. So you'll see that I have game scene here. That is the name of my scene, and my scene contains many items. If you're familiar with Maya, I believe Maya would call this concept an outliner. where you have a series of elements that are um, that are organizational in nature and also have a function. So in game objects, you can actually nest them. You can have components on them that make them different from one another. So, for example, these two game objects, one is a camera and one is a directional light. And the thing that makes them different is that we've added components on them. They're all Unity by default. Added them in and put these components on them. So a main camera has a camera object on it. And that is what defines where cameras are in the world, that when I press play, that will be my view down here. So if I hit my game tab here, boom, there. So I'm just continuing to talk here. There's the hierarchy that has a series of game objects. Each game object has components on it that define what they do. So the camera has a camera component, the light has a light component, and we can define our own components, make them do our own things, but there's a ton of ones that are built into Unity. And when I hit add component, you're going to see, a giant list of stuff. And as they're important, I will mention them. But for now, hey, we just got a camera and we got a light. What else? We have, let me close out of here so that my video is a little more obvious. So what else do we have here? We have the menu, which you can't see on my screen, but for me it goes File, Unity, File, Edit, Assets, Game Object, Component, Services, Window, and Help. So whenever I am going to use a menu up here, I will of course specify that I am using that menu and exactly where I clicked. So there's that upper window menu, there's the hierarchy tab, there's the scene tab, there's the game tab, which while I'm playing, you'll see is if I hit play, you'll see it immediately switches to the game tab because that's what's important. And if I click on this camera during gameplay, you'll see that it has many components on it. Like I said, it has a camera component, but every game object also has a transform component on it. The transform component is what defines the space that an object occupies, its location, its rotation, and its scale. How big is it? Where is it looking? And where is it positioned? Those three things are contained on a transform. That's all the transform does. So now if I were to take my my object, my camera, and I can click on the little X here for rotation and just drag left and right, and you'll see that camera is rotating up and down. Cool. So now let's add a cube to the scene and put it in front of the camera. So I'm just going to right click in here, create 3D object, cube, or I can do game object in my menu, 3D object, cube. Same difference, right? It's going to be called cube. And just to show that you guys know how to rename stuff, I'm going to click on it a second time to let me rename it and say sample cube. I'm really smart. What can I say? I get great names. So we got sample cube. And this one, unlike the other objects, you'll notice has a different component on it called a mesh filter and a mesh renderer. That's because this is a mesh. It looks like something in 3D space. It's not just a node. It has form, and that form is defined by a mesh filter, which says these are all the vectors in space where there are going to be little points, and those points are connected by edges, and those edges make a mesh. And what does that mesh look like when it's being rendered? That's what the mesh renderer defines. So it's going to have this material on it, and that's going to make it blue or whatever. So let's do that. I'm going to right click here, create material. Do we see it? There it is. And I'm going to call it M underscore red. There it is. M underscore red. A material defines the visual qualities of an object after you've assigned that object to use the material. So I've got M red down here. I'm going to click on the little color in it because it's because this is clicked on. So now I can click color and make it red. Boom, done. And you'll see that now that little sphere representation of it is red. Now I'm going to go to sample cube. I'm just going to drag red onto it. Boink. The other way to do it is to open up the materials section of its mesh renderer and drag it in there like that. Boom. Either would do the same thing. And when I drag, I'm clicking, holding, and moving my mouse. That works in Windows and Mac, both the same. Let's zoom in here and look, we got ourselves a red cube. Nice. Okay, so you've installed Unity Hub. You've installed Unity from that hub. I don't care the version. You've created your first scene, or by default. You've added in a cube, and that cube is now red because you've created a material that tells it that it's red. The reason I do M underscore, by the way, is because that material. So when I want to find all the materials in my scene, I can just go in the search bar and say M underscore, and there they all are. Makes life easy. Okay, so now that we have that, I want to make a custom behavior, and it's just going to make it spin. That's it. So I'm going to right click, create C# script. You could also do it from the other menu, but I find this easier. C# script. And I'm going to call it spinner. Spinner, spinner, chicken dinner. So here we are. I made a script. It's called spinner. I'm going to go to my cube. I'm going to hit add component, and I'm going to type spinner. And there it is. Same one. Make sure you type it right, because if you type it wrong, then it's not going to appear there. And if you hit enter or whatever, it's going to make a new script called that wrong thing. And then you're going to have two scripts. It's going to be weird. I see it a lot with like typos. Like they make a minor typo and hit enter, and then now they have two scripts, and one of them is useless. So this object now has spinner on it, and I'm going to double click it. We're going to open it up, and now I can talk about the programming interface. So Unity has kind of two sides of itself. It has the visual side where you're doing everything in an editor, and then it has a programming interface, or an IDE. Visual Studio is the typical IDE of choice. Interactive Developer Environment. I forget specifically what IDE stands for. I'd have to remind myself, but I think it's Interactive Developer Environment. Every script in Unity, if it's attached to an object, is typically called a monobehavior. A monobehavior has a few features inside of itself. So we see spinner. What this is telling us is it's a new class, which is a component called spinner, and everything about spinner is based on monobehaviors. Monobehaviors are a thing in Unity that define a series of features that every component in Unity share. So for example, every component has, I'm just going to add them here, but you don't have to. Awake, start, update, on destroy, boom, these types of things. There's a bunch of them that are shared, but I'll talk about these ones. There's awake. So right when I enter the world, what do? That's in the awake feature. Start. After I've woken up and I've done my first thing, then what do? On start happens right after awake. And then update. Every moment that I'm still in play, What should I be doing? Should I be slowly rotating towards somebody? Should I be counting down a timer? Whatever it is. On destroy. When somebody tells me that I should go away, how should I handle that? If I'm told to be destroyed, is there anything I need to clean up? Do I need to like save something or delete something else? Like, what should I do? Um, there are a ton of different features inside of mana behaviors, but it's not all that important until you need them. And I'm always there for you. By the way, I just want to mention Unity primarily works with C Sharp. This programming language is C Sharp. And we're not going to do anything too difficult. Don't worry. I promise that I will be gentle. And I'm just trying to zoom in. I'm sure that this is a little hard to read for you guys, but option scroll. Ooh, option scroll. There it is. So I'm making it nice and big. And I'm just going to delete everything. Boom, in there. So the only thing I wanted to do was have this spinner spin things. So let's have that update back, because every frame of the game, every moment, I want to be slowly spinning in a direction. So let's just define that direction. Like I said, everything in the game has a transform. Every game object has a transform, which defines its location in space, its rotation in space, and its scale. Transforms have things like knowing where's my forward vector, like where am I looking? And we're going to leverage that in order to tell it how to spin. So here we go. If I go to update, I can say transform. My transform, because it's already always attached to me, any mono behavior in the game is going to have a transform. Every game object has a transform. Dot rotate, because transforms control rotations, it makes sense that I can capital R rotate them. This is a method inside of Unity. So a class is a blueprint of behaviors. A class defines something. So a dog could be a class. A dog can do many things, and each thing it can do is typically called a function or a method. So update is a function or a method, just like a dog can run or walk. Then the instructions inside of that function are just lines of code. So a class is a series of, a class defines what an object is. So a dog is a dog, the spinner spins, and it contains a series of instructions that are broken down into functions. So every class can be broken down into the functions that make it do what it does. So a dog pants, licks, runs, walks, does tricks, whatever it may be. Those are all different functions. And a dog can also be defined by qualities about it. And those definitions are called variables. So I want to be able to rotate by a certain speed in a certain direction. Those aren't the functions. That's not what I'm doing. It's just how I should do it. Those are my qualities of how I should rotate. And just like a dog has scratch fur, and that fur happens to be defined as brown. That is a definition. I have brown fur. That's just a variable on me that defines who I am. So I'm going to have a public float spin speed, and that's going to define how fast I spin. Float refers to any floating point number, a number that has a decimal in it. So in this case, it would be equals, 10.0f. So that means I want it, the f at the end defines it as a float variable. Don't worry about it. And this is going to mean I'm going to turn 10 degrees every second. I'm going to spin very slowly. If it were 180, then I'm going to be turning 180 degrees every second. So now I have transform.rotate with a capital R, and I want to rotate by that spin speed left and right. So let's rotate parentheses. I'm going to add a semicolon so I don't forget to later. And when I'm inside of here, when I type that parentheses, you'll see a description of what it should do. At least I hope you see it at home on this recording. I don't know if like that part gets shared. And these are the different options you have when rotating an object. You can give it different definitions of how to rotate. So I think I want to do the axis that I want to rotate. Axis refers to like, do I want to rotate by my up position, which would make me do this, or my right left position, which would make me do this, or my Z position, which is, pointing this forward, which would make me do this. Ow. I want to rotate by my up vector, so that I'm doing this. It's like spinning around like that along the vector. Sorry, I just got a weird message from my wife about, do we need a new fridge? So what vector do I want to have as my axis? My up axis. So here we go. Rotate by transform.up. So rotate up. By what angle am I rotating at? By spin speed. Now, it should be noted that doing this is running every frame. So that means I'd be rotating 10 degrees really fast, like because games usually have a frame rate of 100 or 25 or whatever it may be. So that means I'm rotating 250 degrees every second. That's real fast. So the way we limit that, the way that we make it scale based on the time that is passing, is that we multiply it by the time that is passing. So spin speed multiplied, so shift 8 to get you the little asterisk, time with a capital T dot delta time. So however much time has passed between last frame and this frame, that is my base number multiplied by my spin speed. And this way guarantees that in 1 second I've rotated 10 degrees. That is this code. That is it. So let's go back over here. And because I made that variable, the spin speed, public, you see it in here. If it were private or protected, there's a lot of different ones you can do, then it would not show up here. But because I did, then I see it. And I could change that number if I wanted. If I go to my game view, I can see it. So if I press play, I can see it spinning. Do you see it spinning? I do. And if I were to make it faster, let's do 180. It's spinning faster. So that is like the very basics of making a scene, adding an object, making a custom script for the object, giving that object a color, all that fun stuff. And there's going to be a ton more to learn. This is just like navigating the systems, knowing what I mean when I say look at the project folder. It's going to be down here, the project tab. That's going to let you navigate your full project, or your like assets folder. When I say the hierarchy, I mean the stuff over here. When I say scene tab, I mean like the little editor where you can drag in new objects and all that fun stuff. The game tab, so that like this is what the player will see when they're playing your game. The inspector, which I actually didn't use that keyword yet, but the inspector is when you click on an object and you see its components. That's the inspector tab. You can see that name up here. So I just want to make sure that we're starting to talk about these keywords like transform, inspector, hierarchy, all that fun stuff. And so that you know what I mean when I'm saying a specific thing. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this very brief introductory primer on Unity, and I look forward to doing more stuff. So I should also note that I'd love to see this zipped up and sent to me in some capacity. I think I need to make a lab submission assignment, or you could include it on your assignment one. I'm not sure which is easier, but anyway, um, the lab here can be submitted easily by, if I go to my folder hierarchy. Let me close out of Unity first here. First step is to delete library, because that only matters on your machine. Then right click, or you can go up a folder here, right click and compress, and then you send me that compressed, or send to zip folder in Windows. That way it'll be quick, easy, and I can see what you're doing. Anyway, thanks again, and I will see you when I see you. Have a good one.